Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, is AgTech Indiana's next big thing? Part 4 of our series taking you behind the gates at Crane. We preview Wabash Valley's Fail Fest, an update on an $80 million project in Carmel. Purdue researchers bring augmented reality to war zones, an interview with Pacers coach Nate McMillan, and a look at how data plays into site selection. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. For the first time, Forbes brought its AgTech Summit to Indianapolis last week. It brought hundreds of global ag leaders and entrepreneurs to Indiana, where AgTech continues to grow as a leading industry. Beck's Hybrids president Scott Beck joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick with more on the future of AgTech in Indiana.
What does it say, this AgTech Summit put on by Forbes, a major national event for the last 4 years? It's been in California for the first time ever, taken out of California, put into the Midwest right here in Indiana. What does that say about the state?
It says a lot about the leadership here in Indiana from a number of different sectors, from government to education to business to startup companies. People are recognizing the assets that are in Indiana and that it is really a hub of innovation when it comes to agriculture and particularly ag bioscience.
Yeah. See, Steve Forbes made an appearance at the event. This was a chance to showcase technology and innovation in agriculture in Indiana. I know there was a big group that toured your complex up at Beck's as part of this event. Again, a chance to shine a light on what's here, right?
Absolutely. There were 10 different companies up there that showcased some of their latest innovations regarding imagery, sensing, testing of crops in season, and just using technology to help farmers, make better decisions.
Talk about technology and innovation. I think Beck's is a great example, and how that is such a big part of your company. And has been for a long time, and has enabled you to grow far beyond Indiana.
Yeah, certainly, the innovation that got us started was back in the 1930s of hybrid seed. And so my grandfather and great-grandfather got their allotment from Purdue University and started with 6 acres. And that innovation of hybrid technology enabled farmers to go from 30 bushels an acre to today, with the use of other technologies, to the USDA says that farmers in the U.S. are going to average 180, so 6 times the yield in just about 80 years. Talk about how if you use that example and you kind of expand it out onto so many of the other things going on in agriculture right now. It's a $16 billion industry estimated in Indiana. What's the potential for the state to really, pardon the pun, grow this thing into something really big in terms of jobs and investment? There is a real focus there, and I think part of the work that Agronomist has done is identifying, where the assets are and where the gaps are. And I think we really have a gap in helping our younger people to understand the connection between science, technology, engineering, and math and agriculture. When you think about the state's assets, 2/3 of what we do in Indiana is raising crops in the land that we have. So crop growing is like a factory. We're producing something. And so I had the opportunity to tour Subaru a few months ago, and many of the technologies they're using there to produce cars, we use the same types of things in agriculture, from imagery and sensors, robotics and automation. It's all happening in agriculture. And so we need, I guess, part of the effort of Agronovus and really all of us in Indiana agriculture is to make awareness of the assets and the opportunities for young people. Yeah, Agronovus, you mentioned the organization really supporting this. The Ag Biosciences has a lot of momentum behind it right now around the state. And you mentioned young people, and I sense you see that as a challenge or an opportunity in terms of growing the Ag Biosciences. Purdue President Mitch Daniels mentioned at this event that student startups have increased 5-fold on the Purdue campus, and 1/3 of those are ag related. So that intellectual property, firepower is out there. It needs to be harnessed. It absolutely is. And with Purdue being a major agricultural educational institute, it's a great partnership with what Purdue is doing in the foundry and the anvil and trying to get the technology and the discoveries out into commercial products. As we wrap up, you see this as an initiative, as something that's real. In other words, the Ag Biosciences could be that next big thing for Indiana. Absolutely. The the passion is there with the people working, the leadership is there, and it's just a matter of getting all that connected into a lot of little sparks that sets off the fire.
All right, Scott Beck is president at Beck's Hybrids, one of the great growing companies in the state of Indiana. Scott, as always, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Gary.
All right.
Still to come, Terre Haute will again spotlight the importance of failure and the latest on an $80 million headquarters project in Carmel. But first, our Behind the Gates at Crane series wraps up this week with a look at the installation's unique value to Southwest Central Indiana and the Department of Defense. Commanding Officer Captain Mark Osterreich and Civilian Executive Assistant Norman Thomas discussed the value in Part 4 of our series.
It has been part of the Southwest Indiana landscape since the early 1940s, covering more than 60,000 acres, and today employing more than 5,000 Hoosiers. But Naval Support Activity Crane remains one of Indiana's best-kept secrets.
We have 3 mission areas. Most of it's technical. About 2/3 of my workforce is technical in nature. But we have these 3 mission areas. We support strategic deterrence mission, electronic warfare, and what we call expeditionary warfare. In those 3 areas, we do research, development, testing, and evaluation of the warfare systems that we deploy mostly to the Navy and Marine Corps warfighters out in the field. And our support that we provide to them is from before a system is born to its eventual, I'll call death and disposal. And even in particular at the end of life for these systems, there's a lot of technical work that goes into extending these systems. Sometimes we have to make them last 50 years.
When you talk about the R&D and the federal labs piece of this and the research and the innovation that goes on here, give people an idea of some of the cool things that are going on kind of behind the scenes here.
So we do quite a bit of work. I mentioned our strategic deterrence work. So that encompasses the Trident missile system, Ohio-class submarines. We do quite a bit of work on both the submarine and in the missile systems. Also, if you take a look at electronic warfare, we support both aviation, shipboard, and undersea assets in that area in varying capabilities, whether it's radars or signal detection and other areas. And then with the Marine Corps and the Special Operation Forces, we're the center of engineering for all Navy small arms, 50 caliber and smaller. So there's really quite a bit of direct influence in those areas. And also, even if you can cross all 3 of those areas together in some instances, that's even a more unique capability that we have in supporting our warfighters.
Crane is home to the world's 3rd largest naval installation, but there is also an Army presence here. In fact, Crane is the 2nd largest Army ammunition depot in the world.
The mission for Crane Army is to mostly ship, receive, and store ammunition and make sure that the ammunition is safe and that it's ready whenever the warfighter needs that ammunition. We also do production operations and a lot of demilitarization work because as a large storage facility, we maintain stocks that eventually go out of service or the weapon system is no longer needed, and so we demilitarize that ammunition as well.
Talk to the extent that you can about the scope of the shipping, the logistics, all the things that goes on here on a daily basis.
We ship around 30-some trucks a day. That's normally around probably a 5-year average of 32,000 short tons of ammunition that we ship annually. And then we also receive about another 25,000 short tons of ammunition. And then as well, we demilitarize somewhere around 7,000 short tons a year as well.
For all of its size, cutting-edge technology, and enormous economic impact, it is the collaboration between Navy and Army that some suggest is Crane's true unique value.
Later in the podcast, Car Auction Services moves forward on its new Carmel headquarters, and Purdue touts new tech for surgeons. But now, Launch Terre Haute is hosting its 3rd annual Fail Fest this week at the historic Indiana Theater. Local, regional, and national speakers will share personal stories of how failure helped lead to ultimate success. Executive Director Shelley Klingerman came in studio with more.
Okay, the role of failure in success, it's gaining a lot of momentum. There's a big Fail Fest here in Indianapolis in central Indiana, and you got on board on this several years ago. This is the third time for the event. Why do an event like this?
I think everybody needs help overcoming that fear of failure. So the more you talk about it, the more you realize that it's just part of the process. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just something to do in a moment in time and move on. And we have a lot of young talent in our community with our universities. So we're really trying to make an impression on them to kind of go for it and go for it while you're there. And we really want them to stay in our community. I've been very fortunate to have been a part in speaking at this event for the last couple of years. It's a great event. And really it is. You're using people who've been there, done that. They're successful, but they had failures. And they really put that on front and center, right? Right. And it's funny because the speakers who are the most vulnerable get the highest marks. So people really like to make that connection. Like if they got past it, I can get past it. Yeah. You are the executive director of Launch Terre Haute, which is an organization, co-working space that really seeks to grow companies in the community. Talk about Launch and how you've grown over the last several years. Yeah, we opened our doors about 3 years ago. Our membership, we've had about 300 members go through. Because we are a college town, those members tend to be a little bit transient, which is great because then they always come back and come in and update us on what they're doing. But we have a lot of interesting things kind of percolating in there. One being an AI company, which shows a lot of promise, and they're kind of really perched for growth. We have some of our entrepreneurs who have started the food truck as one of our success stories. They're going on now and working on some new things. One is an HR app. And now we're getting a lot of people that are realizing the market that Terre Haute offers to the college students. And so they're looking at a lot of services to really cater to that college population. Yeah, we'll talk about that because it is a really target-rich environment when we talk about college students. Indiana State, Roseholm, and St. Mary's, Ivy Tech, WGU. You've got a lot of colleges right there in your own backyard. And you've started a thing called the Community Innovation Challenge, which really targets those young people. Yeah, so we're really trying to make the connection between our college students and our local businesses. And those connections are what really maybe root them in our community. So we are picking and we're partnering with a local business, and we are inviting all the colleges to bring teams and brainstorm around whether it's a challenge, an issue, a problem that business is facing, and really get the voice of the audience that we're trying to keep and connect with. So we had our first one this week. It turned out really well. The business owner, it gives them an opportunity to get perspective that they would never have. If you want to know an answer, ask the person you're trying to connect with. Very quickly, you also you've got a high school meetup, so you're really going even younger to connect with people in the community. Yeah, and that's coming from our business owners' feedback too, who really need to connect with those high school students. It's important too for our community, for those students to make the decision to stay in our community. But in order to do that, you need to know what your options are and what your career paths are and what are the expectations and the qualifications that are going to be required. So we are really reaching out and we're pulling them into our space very intentionally to get them out of their environment so that we can kind of expose them to a new environment and leverage our business partners. FailFest, Wabash Valley, October 3. For tickets, you can go to failfest.us. Correct. And it's at the Indiana Theater, going to be a great event. Shelley Klingerman, thanks very much. Thank you.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, Purdue says its new tech can help surgeons in the toughest situations, and a Pacers preview with Coach Nate McMillan. But first, 1 year after announcing plans for a new Carmel corporate headquarters, Car Auction Services says the $80 million project is on track to open next summer. Reporter Mary Rachel Redman has more.
Construction on the company's new 250,000 square foot global headquarters is right on schedule.
The expected move-in date is sometime over the summer of 2019. So I would say we're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 months from moving in.
And Carr really doesn't have to move all too far from its current headquarters, located just 2 miles from its new 13-acre Carmel campus. So what's the motivation behind the move?
It's very important to us to really have a facility that's going to attract this young talent. We've got this open, bright, airy feeling. The actual dimensions of the building are narrower, so no one is that far away from the outside. Speaking of the outside, we're going to have a lot of nice amenities in our outdoor space, a big lawn area, outdoor seating, outdoor meeting areas, and a terrace. we've really tried to think, what are younger people looking for?
I think the building is a great influence on recruitment. As you probably are well aware, we're in a very competitive market for talent, especially IT talent. And I think the building makes a difference in terms of attracting talent. Just our location, where we're located right here on 31. As I like to say, we're only about a 5-iron from 465. We got lots of amenities right close around us.
And as CAR continues to grow, so do the company's workforce needs.
There's a lot of jobs we're going to bring to Central Indiana. Many of those jobs are IT jobs, but there's a lot of other positions as well within a number of companies that will headquarter here. A number of different jobs that you would expect with the global headquarters that will not only service us here in North America, but will be the back office for all of our operations worldwide. And I think as you walk around this building when completed, you will see that we've incorporated a lot of technology, a lot of innovation, and a lot of transformation that is really leading us into the next chapter of our growth.
Mary Rachel Redman, Inside Indiana Business.
Later in the podcast, Pacers coach Nate McMillan previews the upcoming season and a look at how data analytics plays into the site selection process. But now, Purdue University researchers say they've developed a unique approach that allows experienced surgeons and physicians to help less experienced doctors in war zones, natural disasters, and rural areas perform complicated procedures. Industrial Engineering Associate Professor Juan Vox talked about the technology with Kylie Valletta in the Business of Health.
The project is called STAR, System for Telementoring with Augmented Reality. So it involves a mentor, say a surgeon in a remote location, and the medic in the field. And then tell us how your technology takes over from there.
So the idea is to have experts that convey expertise, knowledge to the medic. That could be in a rural setting or in the battlefield. And what is going on is basically medics wear these see-through displays, these glasses with cameras that capture the views of the casualties. And those views are sent directly to the expert, to surgeon at the, say, a trauma hospital like the one in Indianapolis, IU School of Medicine. The experts look at these images in a large interaction table. They discuss the cases, they perform annotations, they move their hands, they put surgical instruments, virtual instruments, real instruments. Those instruments and annotations are sent back to the medic, and the medic can see these virtual instruments combined with the reality, with the view of the patient at the same time, and can operate following the instructions that he's receiving from the experts.
And this is all, they can communicate, talk back and forth, and this is all live, real time.
This is all working in real time. We try even communication from Indianapolis with Virginia, with Norfolk naval bases, and the communication worked great.
And beyond the military application, you're also working with Purdue to commercialize the technology, perhaps for rural application.
Right. In rural application, there's a serious need for this type of technology because oftentimes they don't have the surgical expertise required given a case that requires some type of procedure. And they need to bring this expertise, and the best way to do that is remotely. So as opposed to previous attempts where the communication was only audio through speech, we're actually bringing images and annotations and videos that experts can in real time use to interact with the medics, with clinicians, with whoever is actually providing the care.
And also disaster relief.
Disaster relief is very important because in those situations you may need urgent assistance, and sometimes the first responders are the people arriving to the place and required to give treatment immediately. Sometimes the procedures could be pretty simple, like cracks, opening the airways for the patient to breathe. But without the required knowledge and training and instructions, those patients may not remain alive. So we have this ability of providing real-time assistance through video, through instructions and verbal commands, to the location and provide assistance in this way.
Well, it's a fascinating technology, and I certainly hope that it's in the field soon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Still to come, we continue our series taking a deeper dive into site selection. But first, Nate McMillan is set to enter his third season as Indiana Pacers head coach. He's earned a 90-74 record so far, landing him a multi-year contract extension. He joined Bill Benner in Inside Indiana Sports to preview the upcoming season.
How does the mental approach change now that people know who the Indiana Pacers are?
Well, we're not going to be afraid of that, and we're not going to, really listen to the outside noise. We didn't listen to it last year when people said that we was at the bottom of the barrel, and now all of a sudden, everybody's got us winning it. It's going to require us to come in and work. Again, this is a new year. This is a new journey, and we're going to have to rebuild this all over again. We do have some changes from last season, so it's not the same team that we have last year.
And the tone setter for that has been Victor Oladipo.
He was hungry to prove, to a lot of people and to himself that he could play this game, and he could play this game at a high level. And all season long, he came in very confident. He worked on his game extremely hard during the off season, came in and got off to a good start, and he just rode that confidence. He continued to grow and get better and improve, and ended up having an all-star season.
Just moving into the St. Vincent Center, what does having that kind of facility mean for your coaching staff, your training staff? I mean, that's first class.
I've been to many of the facilities around the NBA because we have the opportunity to practice there. We have to be one of the top 5 best facilities, and the St. Vincent Center has become one of the resources for our players that can help them improve. The place is, whatever you need is there. Whatever you need is there. We were in Banker's Life for many years, and we had one floor and a small weight room and small jacuzzi and all of that. Now we have 2 floors. All of our offices are in the building. Bigger weight room, bigger jacuzzi. I mean, it's a recruiting tool.
Yeah,
it's become a recruiting tool. Our free agents, we certainly brought those guys in to allow them to see that before they made their decision.
North Carolina, didn't get recruited by the North Carolina State Wolfpack, went to Chowan Junior College, blossomed there. Then you got to play, then they noticed. Your mom was an employee at North Carolina State, and then you got noticed and you went and played 2 years for the Wolfpack under Jim Valvano.
My high school team, I had some good players on that team, and a lot of universities was looking at those guys, and nobody was paying attention to Nate McMillan, except for this junior college called Chowan down in Murfreesboro, North Carolina. And Coach Bob Burke, who was coaching there, really, it was the best decision for me. And things just worked out. It was a great junior college. We went to the Final Four. When I was there, I was able to become an All-American, and then NC State comes knocking at my door, and Coach Valvano screamed at his coaching staff because they didn't recruit me in high school, and the fact that my mother was working over at the university, they knew nothing about me. But when they did come a-calling, I was excited because I lived 5 minutes from the university, had the opportunity to play for NC State and play in the ACC, which at that time was all the kids, it was their dream to play in the ACC.
When you were a kid growing up in Raleigh, North Carolina, did you ever allow yourself to dream that someday you'd have one of the 30 most coveted jobs in professional basketball?
No, it wasn't a dream of mine to play in the NBA, certainly not to coach in the NBA, because from my community, there was nobody who had done that. As I mentioned, the dream for me was to play in the ACC. Yeah. And, there were kids in the community that played in the ACC. So that was my MBA, to have this opportunity to spend over 30 years in the NBA and have this opportunity to, here I am coaching the Indiana Pacers. I still pinch myself.
All right, Bill, great report. Coach mentioned it in the interview. It's largely the same team, but there's definitely an infusion of some new talent that could change the dynamic maybe a little
bit. Absolutely, and it is a dynamic setting now. Tyreek Evans coming in from Memphis, Kyle O'Quinn from the Knicks, Doug McDermott, who I think will really help him with the outside shooting, and then the new point guard, Aaron Holiday, in a backup role. So same old teams. Yep. Victor kind of setting the tone, but a new team in a lot of respects.
And we'll get us started in a few weeks.
You got it.
Thanks very much, Bill.
Great.
And finally this week, in the second part of our 4-part series, taking a deeper dive into site selection, we look at how advances in data analytics are impacting the site selection process. KSM Location Advisor CEO Tim Cook and President Katie Culp joined us with more.
Data analytics. I mean, it seems like analytics permeating everything. You see it in sports, in basketball, and baseball, and for all the everywhere. Analytics. How is it really changing, Katie, the site selection process?
It has changed so dramatically from when I entered the business 20 years ago. I mean, you used to have these 100-page RFIs that would go out to economic development organizations, and you would spend 2 weeks filling them out, and then consultants would get the answers and compile them, and the whole process took months, and they earned their weight in paper. And now, I mean, don't you think it goes by probably within a couple? I mean, you could get all of that done in a week, maybe.
So a lot more efficient, more quickly, and maybe gives you a more apples to apples comparison when more up-to-date valid data.
Yeah, you've got more accurate information, and there's an immediacy to it now where everybody has this information at their fingertips, not just Katie and me, but the companies themselves. Mm-hmm. And so they bring some knowledge to that decision-making process where before they really tried to outsource it to the consultants.
Yeah, give us some examples, because many people out there not in the business certainly may have no idea. Right. They hear about these big deals. They hear about the Amazons, which would be a deal on steroids, but they hear about these deals but have no idea the amount of data and the kinds of things these companies want and these site selection people want.
Yeah, I mean, it is incredibly complex, and the speed of data allows us to do a very even-keeled sort of look at it all. But, you've got, whether it's a corporate or division headquarters, a call center, a manufacturing facility, they typically have a team together of, ops people, the CFO, and kind of an executive team. And we pour through so much data. There's the basic demographic stuff, about workforce and what have you, but then the trends in unemployment, the trends in occupational codes and where the growth is. For example, you might look at two cities, say Indianapolis and Cincinnati, and they might not look that different from one another, but when you drill down into where the labor force has the skills, they may be very, very different solutions for certain types of companies.
And it will change based on the industry. Like if it's a retailer, they are looking at such precise data on customer patterns and that types of thing. They could be looking at two sites that are part of the same intersection. One site's a perfect fit and the other site doesn't work at all for whatever reason. So you get that kind of precision now just based on the data that's available.
Lots of change, analytics among them, but some things have not changed in the site selection process, right?
Yeah. The qualitative piece, I mean, at the end of the day, you have all this data, it's great. You can take a very clinical approach to it, but at the end of the day, it's human beings that are making these decisions. It's not computers, and that part is always going to be part of the process.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much data available that you can almost get paralysis by analysis,
and
right?
I had that down as a question. I wondered if that is part of the deal now.
It is. There's so much. It's like, okay, how do I make a good decision, especially for our clients whose careers are tied to the success or failure of a location? And so it's helping them sift through it and to weigh in things like employer interviews and a lot of the anecdotal stuff that informs them.
Yeah, like a lot of times they'll come to Katie and say, we're overwhelmed, we don't know what decision to make. One issue that could come up is they're on a tight time frame. What is it going to be like to work through that local government to get the zoning, to get the entitlements, all of that? And if that's going to take 3 to 6 months and you don't have 3 to 6 months, that could take that city off the list where otherwise they look like the perfect fit.
And Katie, I think you mentioned before we started taping that when you look at some of the things that companies are looking for in an environment where the employment is so tight.
Yes.
The unemployment situation at historic lows, that makes it challenging.
Yeah, I mean, the most popular locations do have pretty tight labor markets. And so what's a real estate executive, for a company to do saying 3.8 versus 3.7% unemployment? That doesn't really tell you the whole story. There are a lot of nuances and more granular data that they need, that we need to arm them with to make a good decision.
As you look at all these changes and how data analytics are driving change in the way you do business, have these changes and advances plateaued? Have they kind of topped out? Or do you think we'll continue to see evolution and change in the site selection process?
Yeah, I think data is just going to become more readily available, and I think the expectations on what it can do to help make decisions has become greater. So I think the focus is only going to become more so.
But it does seem to keep speeding up all the time. So I guess less sleep for anyone in our business.
Yeah, does from local economic development organizations, let's say, how does that change the dynamic for them? Some, especially maybe in smaller areas, it's an expense. I mean, data analytics and getting that data has got to have an expense to it. Does it put them in a challenging position?
I think it is really hard for some of these smaller organizations that a lot of times are on a list or cut from a list without even knowing it. And so they obviously don't have the same resources to promote some of their data that some of the larger organizations do.
And those organizations that can provide that on a turnkey basis, they're in a better position to qualify to get some of those projects.
Right. Yes. Response speed actually has sometimes as much to do as what their product is.
Absolutely.
Great behind the scenes look at the site selection process. Next month in part 3, we'll take a look at issues like quality of space and the impact on the site selection process. We'll look forward to that. Tim Cook, Katie Culp, thanks very much.
Thanks Gary.
Talk to you soon.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state, at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.